Testing. Hello. Well, I'm here. My name is Gilbert Gutierrez. I'm with the UCSD ALS Clinical Research Program. This is my coworker, another clinical research coordinator, Danielle Bussey. And we just wanted to come and present an opportunity specific to one of the new trials that is actually going to be going live. It just got approved. It's a therapeutic trial, random trial, multi-centered therapeutic trial for Athgar gel. It's a steroid, and it's a phase 2B study. They're looking to just find out the efficacy and safety in a larger, bigger pool of people for that drug, which is FDA approved for other indications, but they're trying to, get the safety and efficacy, the approval eventually for ALS. So it is actually a steroid that over the course of the trial, it's a 49-week trial, I think 36 weeks, or actually when the participant would actually inject the drug daily. There's self-injections, subcutaneous. I was mentioning it's randomized. It's a 2-to-1 for every 2 people that get in. One person actually gets the drug. It's placebo-based. So in the event that an individual's actually getting the drug, 2-to-1, the other person would actually be getting a placebo. Correct. Go ahead. You can do exclusion. And also, one of the participants here asked about the exclusionary factors, so we're going to talk about that. And she wanted to basically know the name of the trial, which is, I think it's the Athgar gel. Athgar.
HP Athgar gel. And the sponsor is Mallinckrodt. I can spell that for you a little bit later. It's a little bit of a long word. It's long, complicated word. Some of the inclusion and exclusion criteria are an SVC, so your respiratory, needing to be above 60%. This is just at your screening visit. Also, if you have anything such as diabetes or any heart failure or any complications with the heart, that's exclusion criteria. As far as we are currently in transition from getting approved for Amendment 2, as of right now, all patients have to be on Riazol. But once we get approved for Amendment 2, then patients don't have to be on Riazol. Right. So that should happen within the next couple of weeks. Right. What else is some exclusion and inclusion? ALS symptoms need to be within 2 years. I know that's a big issue for a lot of patients. We're working on seeing if we can possibly work that out too. But symptom onset has to be less than 2 years. And those are the major inclusion-exclusion criteria. Once you do come in for a screening, if you meet those ones listed, you'll most likely be eligible for a screening. And then at that point, we'll do more laboratory testing and just basically zone it down and see if you are actually eligible. Right. So, and it will be monthly visits for 9 months. And every day for your injection, when you're doing it, you'll be asked to clock in on a device that will be provided at your baseline when you start actually the administration of the study drug. So you'll clock in daily to that just to have a diary, and then, come in every month and do some assessments with us, and that's pretty much the procedure. And if you finish, then you're eligible for the extension, which is open label.
Right. So and that'll get approved with the amendment to the amendment that she was talking about. Once that gets approved, there will be an open label extension for participants. What's that? Open label means that in the event that if you were taking the placebo during the trial, that you would have an opportunity to take the drug.
Yep.
After the conclusion of the study, they would open an extension for those individuals. Yes.
What's the expected benefit?
They want to see, as it is right now, and she was talking about Riazol, they want to partner up the steroid with Riazol to see if it has an effect in slowing down the symptoms of ALS, to see how that would work. I mean, it is an FDA-approved drug for other indications. They're testing for the safety and efficacy. for ALS currently.
So this isn't a treatment. It would be
Right.
just this. Its main purpose is to see if we can slow progression.
Right. Any other questions, Keith? We have handouts and flyers that we will be providing in the back. A pamphlet, you could take it. You have our cards, me, myself, and then also our other clinical research coordinator who wasn't able to be here today, Rose Privet. You could follow up with the cards, call if you have interest, take a pamphlet. And if you have any questions, we'll definitely be able to hopefully answer those for you after the meeting. Any questions?
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you.
And we can put your contact information on our YouTube link.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll do that. So as to continue our planned agenda today, I'm going to introduce Mitz, who's going to come forward and start us off on our planned presentation, in addition to the wonderful news from clinical research on a new trial that some folks might be interested in. So.
Okay. Can we hear me? Good. Let me pass these handouts for you. I don't have... Thank you very much. I'm going to just speak for a few minutes, then we'll get into some more maybe details if you'd like. Today's topic is health scams and health fraud. The problem with many incurable or chronic debilitating diseases is many individuals get desperate and they are seeking various types of treatments where there isn't sufficient scientific evidence to support those. The handout I gave there is about maybe what's called alternative or integrative medicine. These are areas where there isn't sufficient scientific evidence to put them into what is called scientific medicine. So let me talk about that briefly. Medical science is a big change from 100 years ago when there are all sorts of medical types of schools and medical treatments. You can get hydrotherapy and radiation treatments and radioactive wells and all sorts of things. And the Flexner report, this is a nationally commissioned report, looked at I think there are over 20, quote, medical schools just in Chicago, and said, medical education should be based upon undergraduate requirements that people attend an undergraduate school with curriculums that included science and chemistry and biology and things of that sort before even applying to medical school. There are national standards set for medical schools, and in fact, hundreds of medical schools were closed. The chiropractic schools decided to remain separate. The osteopathic schools decided to remain separate. And over time, the osteopathic schools used the medical school textbooks and things of that sort. And so we have medical education in this country and MDs and DOs who have a background based in medical science. When people, again, get faced with disease and loss of function, they are easy for health scams. These are then areas that are a problem because the evidence for them isn't there. And just going through that, I think, handout I just gave you, the number one thing is they may not be safe. By safe, there's immediate problems. We have folks that have allergic reactions because these products have peanuts or proteins or things that people are allergic to. They're mislabeled. Long-term wise, they can have chronic kidney, liver, and other toxicities. I can go into specifics of that down the road. They're no more effective than a placebo. A placebo is a psychological response where people, if they take something or do something, they feel better. And a big red pill is more powerful than a little white pill. Rituals, going through a lot of ceremony and stuff is very effective for, by and large, pain, as are touching or even shots. So acupuncture or giving a shot, people feel better because of the placebo effect. there's also the natural course of things. So arthritis and other conditions have good days and bad days. And if you took a celery juice or something and the next day you felt better, was that just coincidence because of the waxing and waning of different conditions? Or was that due to the medication or treatment itself? These are a tremendous amount of waste of money and time. They promote anti-critical or anti-scientific thinking. There's a word called epistemology. Are you familiar with that term? Epistemology is the word that is, how do you know what you know? The science of or the study of how do you know something. So scientific epistemology, you know, again, I know pornography when I see it, or I know art when I see it. It's another kind of epistemologic kind of knowledge. But scientific epistemology is based upon measurement. Science is based upon first observations that are done in detail, getting careful measurement. Math being the language of science. I digress. So based upon medical scientific stuff, this is kind of not so good. Misleading experts, and again, just because you have an MD degree doesn't necessarily mean you're an expert. Far from it. My medical degree, my medical expertise is fairly limited, but others can get PhDs and other degrees online. Or, again, a lot of, I'm going to say not so good colleges provide various degrees in various areas that I'm not sure justifies their claims as an expert. I think what we want to try to move to is that kind of openness. What is a researcher? What is a scientist? Well, let's look at the quality of that science. What's the quality of that evidence? But frankly, some things are patently false. I did a study a number of years ago on an herb, and it showed it was of no value. But some other article says, oh, gee, that good work done by Dr. Tomita showing that this herb was of benefit. No. If you look at the original article, that's exactly the opposite of what it said. These things then lead to delays in effective treatment. And it's, again, a tremendous waste of your time, physicians' time, everyone's time, because people are coming in expecting different sorts of a specific labs or tests or whatevers. Takes, again, advantage of vulnerable and desperate people and causing undue fears. And, gee, if you don't do this, things will get worse. If you don't come back, whatever it is. And, again, a lot of this can contribute to sort of the environmental degradation, loss of endangered species, growth of just pulling in huge amounts of fish for fish oils or other types of supplements. We'll touch on supplements in a bit. I just want to make my comments brief and general. We have George from the FDA, and he's going to make some comments. I wanted to. Were you able to set up your flash drive? Okay, great. I'm going to open up right now then for questions as he's setting up his flash drive. Do you have any questions there? Yes.
Stem cell treatments?
As you know, and again, I was out of town here, but I understand stem cells are going to be already the big questionable sort of an area. Right here in San Diego, for those that are here in August this year, something called StemImmune Inc. Was seized. They seized vials of vaccinia, which is the old cowpox. I think it was the cousin of smallpox. Everyone got the vaccination for that. This stem cell clinic right here in San Diego seized those. We don't know how they got hold of the vaccinia vaccines, but that was a big problem. The vaccine itself, if you have eczema, dermatitis, things of that sort, you can get a generalized rash. There's no evidence for that. Stem cells looks like it's the up-and-coming big scam, not only locally perhaps, but nationally. There's an ad in yesterday's, or cover thing in yesterday's, or was it, let's see. Date on this is November 7th, Union Tribune, stem cells. Again, what hopefully we'll have the DA's office person come in and be able to join us. Both of us gave a little talk early this morning for the senior groups in East County. What is health fraud and scams really takes a lot of diligence to figure out what that is. So I'm not saying that stem cells are scams and frauds, but you've got to be careful with regards to what's the evidence, what's the quality of that. And I'm not going to be calling all alternative medicine or all these sorts of things a scam until you do the good work to figure out what that is. But that's a big concern. Okay. George?
Thank you, Dr. Tomita.
You're all set.
Yeah, my mic is supposed to work. Can everybody hear me all right? Thank you. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. Health fraud is a very important issue. It's something that the FDA is always vigilant about and tries to do something about, and is often effective in stopping products at the ports of entry, and then if they do get into commerce, doing something about them if we are alerted to them. So health fraud is a big issue, and let's move forward. It's always a good idea at the outset to define our terms. So what is health fraud? It's the deceptive promotion, advertisement, or sale of products as being effective to diagnose, prevent, cure, treat, or mitigate disease, or to provide a beneficial effect on health, but which have not been scientifically proven safe and effective for such purposes. It could be intentional or inadvertent. And believe me, there's a lot of health fraud or fraudulent health products out there in the market today. It could either present a direct health hazard or an indirect health hazard. How do we define those? A direct health hazard means that the product is likely to cause injury, death, or other serious adverse effect when used as directed. An indirect health hazard means that the product poses no direct hazard, but a consumer is likely to delay or discontinue appropriate medical treatment by relying on that product. Now, for indirect public health risks, we see products with unsubstantiated claims. Use of the product and reliance on the product may delay appropriate diagnosis and treatment. And unbeknownst to the consumer, that product may interact with other drugs and cause adverse health effects. Even products out there, such as dietary supplements, that are not fraudulent products, as you'll see later, can interact with other drugs and cause harm to the patient. Common types of health fraud scams involve chronic serious diseases, cancer, arthritis, diabetes, so on and so forth. I think it's human nature to believe claims that a product can cure a disease or a condition that is essentially uncurable, or at best you can maintain with that condition. There are people out there who would like to find an easy and expensive way to cure a disease, and who can blame them? There are tainted dietary supplements out there. There are dietary supplements that I have seen come into this country and have been stopped at ports of entry that contain prescription medicines. And that's not supposed to happen. That's illegal. And there are weight loss products out there that either don't work or are unsafe, or both. And there are products that claim to treat influenza or are anti-aging, that provide the proverbial fountain of youth. Emerging issues: fungal meningitis, prescription drugs removed, marijuana, and then there are some old standbys. Marijuana as a potential cure for cancer has been in the news lately, probably mostly as a result of this news release that the FDA put out recently, November 1st. And the FDA had found that there are a number of companies out there marketing unproven products derived from marijuana that claim to treat or cure cancer. This is a particularly egregious situation because, again, use of these products and reliance on them as the sole way to treat cancer can prevent people from using more effective and safer treatments, or I should say not more effective, but effective and safe treatments. This has probably arisen, or the situation has probably arisen, at least in part, by the fact that marijuana has become or is becoming legal in a number of states. It is still not legal on the federal side of things. Now here's an important, probably the most important part of the presentation, the top 10 red flags that may give an indication that a product is fraudulent. There are claims that the product will treat a serious and or incurable disease. Claims will often be made that the product is a cure-all or a miracle cure. In the advertising or articles or even books about the product, you'll find personal testimonials. In the author's or the promoter's credentials, you'll often find fake medical and scientific credentials. Claims will be made that the product is a new discovery, a scientific breakthrough, a secret formula, and quite often an ancient remedy. Moving on, these products are often claimed to be quick fixes for weight loss and other conditions. Sometimes the products equate all natural with being safer, but we know that there are natural products out there that are not safe and that can be harmful. So don't equate those two terms. People will often be hoodwinked by scientific sounding or impressive sounding scientific terms or ingredients. A lot of times you'll see a money-back guarantee. And last but not least, the claim that they, meaning the medical establishment or the government, they don't want you to know about this product. Well, a lot of times we don't want people to know about the product because it's a bad product. So where do you find these health fraud scams? On websites, you have online press releases, in the social media, lots of promotional material, magazines, TV ads, particularly infomercials in the early morning hours. There's a global marketplace now which has expanded the target audience for these products, internet access and e-commerce. And with the internet, it's particularly hard to police these companies that are promoting these products because they're all over the place and it's hard to keep track of them all. The FDA tries to do that, especially with regard to imported products. Some of the other means of marketing these products are listed there. It's quite amazing the volume of imported FDA-regulated products. These numbers are a little bit old. They're probably from a few years ago. But at least 150 countries are exporting FDA-regulated goods to the United States, which represents a third of all U.S. imports. There are 130,000 U.S. importers of record, 300,000 plus foreign manufacturers. So, yes, sir, you had a question?
What percentage of those goods are counterfeit?
I wish I knew the answer. I will tell you that they tend to be, more often than not, goods coming from Asia. And so we are particularly vigilant about dietary supplements and other types of products, and you'll see some examples of those later, coming into the United States from Asia. I would mention as an aside, the FDA has a very robust imports operations branch in Long Beach, and we monitor and inspect goods coming into the United States from foreign countries, coming into LAX, coming into the ports of Long Beach and San Pedro. And we can't get everything, but we do a really good job with the help of electronic equipment, screening equipment, and other devices. And we also have some great software. We have a software program called Predict. It's a huge database, and it kind of gives the FDA warnings if some companies exporting products have a bad track record. So we'll give those companies and their products increased scrutiny. So as I mentioned, a lot of the promotions are through social media, online press releases, even airline magazines. You'll see those kinds of ads there, promotional literature. And before I go on to direct health risks, I wanted to mention that health fraud scams are particularly in evidence with regard to dietary supplements. And part of the reason is that dietary supplements generally are not regulated by the FDA before they're put on the market. So they get on the market, and then we try to inspect or monitor dietary supplements, especially the imported products, and we look at websites and do inspections at the ports of entry, but our hands are kind of tied because we don't have the legal authority to approve these products before they come into the United States. So one red flag that I should mention is that if you see a dietary supplement that claims to be FDA approved, it's probably health fraud because the FDA does not approve dietary supplements. People need to know that. Tainted supplements. These are supplements that have ingredients that are not supposed to be there. Oftentimes we'll find supplements coming into the country for enhanced sexual performance, for example. And they're not coming into the country as drugs, but we're finding that they contain Viagra and other similar substances, which is a big no-no. So that's something to look out for. Often untested and unstudied ingredients. Again, going back to the situation of dietary supplements, they're not FDA approved, and a lot of times they're not backed by scientific research. So you have all these dietary supplements on the market, and there's virtually no research in a lot of the cases to substantiate their claims. A lot of times consumers and physicians are unaware that these supplements are tainted, and there are a lot of other problems with them, and there have been reports of serious injury and death, including strokes, acute liver injury, kidney failure, and pulmonary embolisms with some of these supplements. Here are some examples of the kinds that I was talking about. As I said, a lot of them come into this country from Asia. The FDA, part of what I'm doing here today, I'm a health communications specialist, and I do public outreach. I give presentations and provide exhibits at various conferences and do as much as I can to get good information out to the public so they can make informed decisions. And so we have informational materials such as the one you see here. We have a couple of brochures that I brought with me. And if you contact me, and my email address is george.decker@fda.hhs.gov, I could send you some of this material that if you order in quantity, you could ask for up to 50 of these. We'll send them to you, and then you can distribute them further. So what are some strategies for combating health fraud? Enforcement actions by the FDA and other agencies that we'll discuss a little bit more later. To kind of leverage our ability to enforce against health fraud, we collaborate with other agencies, the Federal Trade Commission, other federal agencies, state and local governments, and also foreign counterparts. A lot of people don't realize that the FDA has offices in quite a few foreign countries. And we do inspections out there, and we work with foreign governments to help combat health fraud. Here are some of the FDA's enforcement tools: advisory, warning letters, untitled letters. That's usually the first step. That's what we try to do to get companies that are in violation to cooperate and to either change some of their claims or take their products off the market. We have administrative procedures that can be used, judicial procedures. A fairly new regulation allows the FDA to actually destroy up to $2,500 worth of contraband coming into the United States and into the ports. It used to be that we'd have to return it to the company, which could get fairly costly at times. And actions by states or other federal agencies. We've done warning letter blitzes. We're doing a bit of a blitz now with regard to the marijuana and the cancer claims connected with them. And here are some examples of some of those blitzes that we've done. As Dr. Tomita mentioned, there are certainly problems out there with alternative health products and herbs. And here's some more examples of consumer education and outreach that we and others do. There's a section of the FDA website that deals with health fraud scams. FDA consumer updates are available on the FDA website. WebMD is good. We have meetings with industry and other agencies at conferences they hold. And we collaborate with online retailers. Here's some more resources that are available. It's interesting, the last one there, report suspected criminal activity. There are a lot of people who don't realize that the FDA has within it a division or an office called the Office of Criminal Investigations. And their agents are permitted to carry firearms and make arrests. So we do have that tool there. So I think that's the last page or the last slide, and I'd be happy to respond to any questions that you might have.
So is there data on how many people a year get serious complications from fraudulent treatments?
I think you'll find some of that data on the FDA website in that section on health fraud. But of course, if these adverse events are not reported, then we don't know about them and we can't compile that information. So in some cases, what's reported and what the data that's out there may just be the tip of the iceberg.
And I think there's a natural inhibitor to reporting. Because if I just spent $25,000 on stem cell treatment for my wife and it didn't work, I'm embarrassed.
It could be embarrassing, yeah.
Yeah, so am I going to report it? Go ahead, man.
Right, but we do want to hear.
Yeah.
We do want to hear about those things. The agencies want to hear about that. If they don't hear anything, then they think everything's fine. So so please let us know and let us know about those as soon as possible, because that's so important. That's so important. And and again, I think we already are hearing about stem cell.
You can share that.
All right. So this is year to date, 2017. 3 families have spent $90,000 on wasted stem cell treatments for ALS.
Right here in San Diego.
Right here in River City, San Diego. And it's, but again, desperate people in these sort of kind of couched terms of, well, this might help. And when people are desperate, I don't blame them. But we're here to help look at some of these sorts of things. Some of these claims are in very technical sort of terms. I have a link with a stem cell guy up at UC Davis. I can share that stem cell site with you. He's similarly aghast at the stem cell claims that are being made all the time. And it's a weekly announcement that I get with regards to stem cells.
People need to know that they're not alone, that the FDA is out there to help. Before anybody undertakes a treatment like that they've heard about that sounds like a miracle cure, they absolutely should talk with their healthcare provider about it first and get his or her opinion before they spend any money or begin a course of treatment.
Let me try to.
Go ahead.
Many of my colleagues say they don't. In fact, when I started practicing, again, I recall patients coming in saying, "Gee, what do you know about this blue-green algae that's supposed to be good for?" And I said, "I've never heard of this stuff. Let me look into it." So it takes time. I don't learn about that stuff in medical school, but you spend some time looking at these sorts of things, and oh my God, this blue-green algae. In fact, I'm thinking about a related case. This lady, this is a case up in LA. This mid-level kind of starlet was her teeth were falling out, her hair was falling out, all this sort of stuff, and she found out she was taking these chlorophyll pills. Again, blue-green algae has a lot of chlorophyll in, and these chlorophyll pills were from chopping down acres of barley, something. Well, not only was it collecting the chlorophyll from these fields, but it was also collecting tractor blade shavings. So she was getting heavy metal toxicities from eating all the chlorophyll from an acre of alfalfa. Plus, so she had high levels of zinc and tin, and her teeth were permanently falling out. Terrible stuff. And why? She wanted to cleanse her system with these chlorophyll pills.
Doctor, something that just came to mind.
Yes.
I'm positive you know more about this than I do.
Uh-oh.
But I think, I hope you agree with me, that a distinction should be made between fraudulent health treatments and experimental drugs that may be available in clinical trials for patients that otherwise would not have any hope. Is that something you can discuss a little bit?
Okay, yes. So fraudulent, which again, I'm sorry, our person from the DA's office couldn't make it. I got an email from her about some other conflicts this afternoon. I said, that's okay. We're tough. We can handle it. But fraud, again, has a bar of determining that someone's guilty, if you will. So these terms are somewhat ambiguous. But that fraud means, again, deception, et cetera. Experimental treatments, again, here's the quality evidence, and then if you're enrolled in an experimental study, it has to have IRB, Institutional Review Board approval, and a lot of other kinds of things. And if you don't see those sorts of things, then, again, let's hear about it. I recall an article published a number of years ago on something called healing touch, in which you don't touch anyone, actually. You kind of ripple your hands around someone. And this healing touch was to promote healing. Well, it talked about this study done at this university where they got students, and they put I think kind of some sort of biopsy in their arm. I'm thinking, what IRB would approve such a study? None of that was in there, and none of the details were in that published study in a no-name article about this procedure. So even though published in a fairly flim-flammy sort of place, I looked at that and thought, oh, this is ridiculous. There was actually in that same vein, I should touch on healing touch, non-healing touch, which is now being done by a variety of nurses. There was a teenager, this article was published in JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, again about a decade ago, in which these healing touch practitioners can feel this aura or something. And they agreed to have this teenager do this study where the teenager sitting on that side of the table, the healing touch experts sitting on this side, and there's then a cardboard here with these little cutouts for their arms. So they put their hands underneath here, and they claim they could feel that aura within 5-6 inches of the hand. So the practitioner sticks his hand or her hand underneath the thing there, and the teenager says, "Is it left or right? Left or right?" And of course, the response was totally random. There's no evidence that healing touch practitioners could feel any auras, and it was published in JAMA, and you can find the reference or contact me. But these are going on. People think that by this calm down.
I wanted to add something to the PowerPoint presentation. It's not in there, but I think it's something that people need to know, and that is I used to be a journalist. I used to write for a newspaper, and later on I did a lot of media relations. And what people need to know is that they should not be chasing the latest headline in terms of medical breakthroughs. And the reason I say that is that medical journalists typically, unless they're from some of the top-ranked publications, the media outlets, they tend not to dig very deeply into their stories. And so a lot of times you'll hear a news story, well, this research study has found that this treatment has been effective in combating a certain disease or condition. The thing is, and I know Dr. Tomita will back me up on this.
Uh-oh. George, you put me in these spots all the time.
Good medical research takes time, and you shouldn't make decisions based on just 1 or 2 or 3 clinical studies.
Yes, that's the case. The first thing you want to do is, what's the quality of that study? Was it replicated? What's the other information on that? And as you mentioned that, again, this is a study in the paper that said, and that is in the lay newspaper, about acupuncture has been shown to be effective for migraine headaches. And I thought, that's great, but when I looked at that paper, it showed that the placebo group was just as effective for migraine headaches. They didn't include that. So if you have someone who has a headache, a bad headache, and you just wait an hour, most of their headaches are going to be gone. And so the control group and the placebo group did just as well, but that was not in the title. It said migraine was effective for acupuncture was effective for migraines. People have questions? Yes?
So I'm here, and for the purpose of my question, either myself or my loved one has ALS. The medical world doesn't have a lot of options for us. We have 2 FDA-approved inhibitors or things that possibly slow it down. I won't use the word treatment because I don't think it applies. But I want to do something. And I know that makes me ripe for health fraud, scams, dietary supplements. What do you say to that population? I mean, I want to do something for my loved one or myself. I can't just do nothing. And I'm desperate.
Big silence. Wow, what a tough question. Diseases like ALS, or ALS in particular, a terrible disease where and again, professionally, I've certainly had patients who have had very vital lives and are suddenly or over a period of time, something's going on, and then they find out they've got ALS, which again has a spectrum in terms of its severity, its progression, and that unpredictability also makes it a very both challenging and frightening condition. a couple things. Number one, I guess, and I don't have anything that's going to be somewhat off the cuff here. Number one is that sharing of some of that anxiety, depression, frustration, et cetera, is invaluable. And I think that's where coming to or having the ALS Association is an opportunity for people to share some of those sorts of things. I'm reminded of a Scandinavian saying, I recall if it's Swedish, or anyway, it was happiness shared is doubled and sadness shared is halved. Okay, so the old timers knew this. You don't have to go to a psychiatrist or a mental health person, but being able to share some of that, again, with family, with friends, or with others, helps to take some of that anxiety, that burden off. Two, we do have drugs. And again, their effectiveness, again, is not a slam dunk. But if people are having trouble with uncontrolled anxiety, depression, whatever it is, some physicians have control over these drugs. And that trial and error, I'm going to say trial and error, with regards to that is again, another part of that. The third is the anxiety or upset on the part of family and the individual is regarding death and dying, suffering. So trying to get a better handle on those sorts of things is an area that folks in hospice spend a lot of time in. There have been several popular books out. Right now is that Atul Gawande's book on, what's the title of that? Anyway, Atul Gawande was a cardiac surgeon. He's now written about caring towards the end of life. And he, as a cardiac surgeon, really didn't realize there's a whole part of the medical community that addresses end-of-life stuff. And these folks spend their time working with individuals with chronic and incurable diseases. And so helping to put a framework, and sometimes part of the fear is the fear of the unknown. Well, let me say it's just off the cuff, but I wish I had a good answer. I don't.
I would add one other thing, and I would certainly invite Dr. Tomita to comment on that. And that is one other thing that people in that kind of situation might want to look at is whether they might be a good candidate for a clinical trial. And there's a website, I believe the URL is clinicaltrials.gov, where you could get information on ongoing clinical trials, and I think even clinical trials where they are recruiting candidates for them. So it might be an option to become involved in a clinical trial where you might get some treatment.
Yes,
that
thank
might
you.
work. I don't know.
Thank you.
Sure.
Can I speak on that really quick?
Sure.
We are the ALS program here in San Diego. So as far as clinical trials and having options, I know Dr. Avitz is the main doctor in UC San Diego, or not UC San Diego, in San Diego working with ALS. Clinical trials, there's never a guarantee, but if you're not interested in the two drugs that are slowing progression in ALS, that is an option. And the chance for a lot of these studies is even if most of them are placebo or open label, so they're randomized. But there's a chance for an extension a lot of times. And, it's not a guarantee, but it's an option. It's not just, preparing for end of life. It's an option, and there's no guarantee, but I know we're dedicated to, treating this and finding some other options, because I know that's the big thing with this disease is what are my options? I don't want to just quit, or I don't just want to let this disease encompass me. What are my options? So clinical trials give you that. I guess that's what I have to say. Do you have a question for me, Keith?
I'm glad you included that. The research studies indeed are so invaluable, and anecdotally, I'll just mention last week there was a wonderful article in the New England Journal of Medicine, the most respected weekly medical journal about a pediatric neurodegenerative condition where usually by the age of 5 they're dead from tremendous. Anyway, a new gene therapy has shown that these kids are just zooming past those deteriorations. And then actually a colleague of mine years ago had a little kind of chronic sinus condition and got some x-rays, and he looked at it, and they looked pretty good. He had the radiologist look at them, and the radiologist says, this looks pretty good except for what? Well, except for this little area here. He was diagnosed with something called, it's got a bad name. It's called fatal midline granuloma. It's a tumor that eats the middle of your face. Anyway, it's a horrible disease. He got involved in signed up for a clinical trial in Texas. Again, even though it was based here in California, he was able to be part of that study. And he's doing fine decades later, rather than having a 6 months prognosis at the time of that diagnosis decades ago.
So could you speak to the chances of a particular person getting in a clinical trial? Because I think that's where our folks experience a lot of disappointment. So we just want to manage expectations so that they're not continually frustrated, don't qualify.
Definitely. There's inclusion and exclusion criteria for every clinical trial. That's most likely those are based on what drug you're getting. So, for instance, the drug we were talking about earlier with the steroid, things such as having diabetes or stuff like that, that's going to raise your sugar way up. So there's regulations to make sure that this drug isn't doing more harm to you than the possible good it could do. A lot of studies, this is unfortunate, but your respiratory is a big factor. So respiratory function needs to be, the average is about 60%. And when you get further into your disease, that usually does go down. Some drugs don't allow you to take things such as Riazol, which is approved, and some need you to take Riazol. So it really just depends on the study. Things such as positive tests for HIV, any immune problems, or things such as high cholesterol. Your labs need to be in a relatively normal range so that these drugs don't conflict when they enter your system and throw other things out of whack. So there are inclusion and exclusion criteria, and that is frustrating. Also, onset of the disease is a big thing. I know a lot of trials, it's about 3 to 2 years, and that's depending if they're going off your diagnosis or your symptom onset. But then there's other druggies. We have a couple coming up, hopefully, that will have longer times where the symptom onset is. I know a lot of drugs are trying to move toward moderate progressors because we have a lot of people who are moderate progressors and aren't slow progressors, so we need to target that big group. So research is always changing. I guess the best answer is the hope is that there'll be more options in the future. There's already more options within this decade. So
how does it work? I want to be in every clinical trial that I can possibly participate in. Mm-hmm. Is there a place I register and then they'll contact me based on my profile? What are the mechanics of this?
Yes. So you can go on RDCRN. Is that right, Gil? RDCRN contact. That's.
Post the website.
Yes, it's RDCRN. You can type that in, and you can actually create. I think you enter some of your information, just some basic information, and it provides you with a list of studies that may be applicable to you. The thing is, you might have to do a little bit of research. My best suggestion would be, if you're involved with a clinic, talking to that team. They'll have more options for you. They'll know your criteria, what your lab results are. They'll be able to provide you with a better option. And usually, I know at our clinic, Gil's there every Tuesday, and so he'll be able to provide you with the best option for San Diego. But definitely becoming involved in a clinic is the best option.
Okay, so I have Brand X Healthcare and I can't go to UCSD. Can I still get in a clinical trial?
Yes.
Actually going to the www.clinicaltrials.gov to actually look for any opportunities that would be available in your area. You could search by region, city, It breaks it down pretty precisely to your location and exactly what opportunities would be available to you. So that's a really good site to look at because it would list any live clinical trials that are available and actively recruiting. So that's the best site to look at.
And for these clinical trials, again, there's funding for them such that, in fact, they even pay, in some cases, folks to be involved in that. Where it gets into a problem is people will say, well, gee, we're doing this research here in Baja California, pardon me, in Mexico, but it's going to cost you for this stuff, and that becomes a problem and a question, and a concern. The other thing is that some physicians with, again, other incurable diseases, let's say certain types of cancers, say, gee, we've gone through this cancer, this treatment, this treatment, this treatment. Now, we can certainly try this treatment. There's been some case reports maybe of this or something of people doing better, but the chances are maybe 1 and maybe less than 100. Maybe no one even knows. We're just hearing this might be available. Again, desperate, 1 in 100, sign me up, right? Oh, boy. So how do we find that balance when one is looking for that hope? I think part of that is to, again, step back and say, where am I going with this? How do I get my things in order so that I can then help with maybe a legitimate clinical trial where my unfortunate condition may be of benefit not only to me or my family, but maybe to others.
Doctor, do you know offhand with some of the more iffy drugs, approved drugs, but have a relatively small chance of curing or improving the disease?
So that's
what I was going to ask
yes.
is, do you know how willing insurance companies are to pay for that kind of treatment?
So again, those are broad questions for which we don't have an answer. Right. And again, it depends upon the specifics of that. But we're here to help you. And if you're interested in any of those sorts of things, I'll give you my card, et cetera. I don't want you to waste your fortune or your family's fortune or somebody's fortune on worthless sort of things. FDA approves drugs for this. Once the drug is approved by the FDA for this, there are then studies done for this blood pressure drug for treating other conditions. Prostate enlargement comes to mind there's a whole family of drugs that a drug, again, used initially for heart stuff has been found to be good for migraine. So that's then based upon some reasonable studies. And again, are some of these other drugs maybe, or treatments? And I'm going to include things like yoga and this, that, and the others. I think a lot of these alternative treatments. Let's try to do those studies. Oh, and by HIV, my gosh, the whole HIV/AIDS, when that happened, the community, my gosh, we were able to get that done quick. ALS just does not get on the radar. And so how to get ALS, that sort of support. I'm with you guys. This is a condition that needs that kind of support. Yes?
The frustration that I have is the doctors say, I'll see you in 4 months, 6 months. Nobody has ever looked at me, and they just don't care.
Again, I don't have good answers for these things. Just because you have an MD degree, I didn't say that meant that everything they say, do, or whatever is right. I'm glad you're here today. I'm glad you're, again, share that frustration. I share that too, and I'm here to advocate for you. So if you get pushed around, let's talk about, I'm going to push back.
And I'm going to back you up.
Okay. I can digress on some other sorts of things, but thank you for coming, and we'll help you.
So what else can I do to support clinical research? So let's say I'm in the fourth quarter. I don't qualify for clinical trials. I've elected not to participate in some of the recently approved FDA drugs, or I have, either way. but my time is coming else. What other options do I have to support research for the next generation or the next other folks that are still dealing with this terrible disease? You can take this one, Gil? I know it's touchy, but we just got to say it.
I would say, the other opportunities that we have available would be in that situation that Keith brings up. There's, at UCSD, within our program, there's biorepositories where there is donations of certain body parts where the patient would donate specifically within our program would be the brain and spinal column, which are used to advance science for ALS. Specifically, from what I understand, that those two organs, those items of donation, have a very high, they could provide a lot of scientific information and research as far as finding out, potential biomarkers and things like that to advance science. So that would be one option to do.
How do I do it?
You would contact me, and I would be able to provide the information. It's a consent form. I would actually talk to the families, talk about the process, consenting first with the patient, talks about transport, expectations, and things of that nature. I would cover the ins and outs of the consent form, and at that point, we could go ahead with it. The family could go ahead with the donation.
Why is it that they wait for us to pass to do that? Because my brain is alive now.
Correct.
My spinal column is alive now. Isn't there
I think
value in researching people that are still walking?
I can help answer that question based on some experience I've had. The answer, in a nutshell, is both. Research needs to be done on live human beings, but in order to advance other kinds of research into medical conditions, you actually have to have the tissue, which can only be obtained from someone who has passed away. I'll give an example. Before I came to the FDA a year and a half ago, I worked for the VA's National Center for PTSD. And this weekend is Veterans Day, so it's particularly important to think about these things. And one of the things that the founder of the National Center for PTSD did, he did an amazing thing. He established, with the help of colleagues around the country, a national PTSD brain bank. And that brain bank is going to collect essentially brain tissue of veterans who have had PTSD, and they're going to study that brain tissue to find out more about the changes in the brain that are wrought by PTSD. Now, that kind of research can only be done on brains of people who were not living. So, again, I go back to both. You can do research in both regards. Wouldn't you agree?
That's exactly correct.
Yeah.
Well, my question is we haven't gotten any further by looking at those who have. So I think they should redirect and concentrate on the people that are still here.
I guess what comes to mind, and by the way, these are terribly good questions, and because they're so good, we don't have good answers, right? Okay, so again, that article in last week's New England Journal of Medicine about this terrible progressive neurologic disease that occurs in kids, they were able to give them a viral, this DNA encapsulated in this virus as one shot, and it changed things. So with kids are alive and their bodies falling apart and all that stuff, and it's just like, I was just so to get that research on ALS, we need the social recognition. I'm going to say the funding. And so how do we get that funding and that visibility where we're able to make those changes? So ice bucket challenges. Now, what else? What are we going to do? Something else? What are we going to do next, Keith?
Thanks, Gil. So the ALS Association and allied associations worldwide understand the need for funding for research. It's a constant, consistent problem, and the advocacy that occurs in Washington every May is part of the answer to your question.
Yes,
Is that they have a huge effort every May in Washington. They meet throughout the country during the year. The researchers come together to compare progress, who's working on what results do you have, where should our focus be next. There are symposiums right here in California every year with a high focus on ALS, and there's meetings in Boston in December, that's worldwide, where a lot of our local folks involved in ALS research and treatment will be attending.
And part of my career was not only in medicine, but in medical education. So how do we get the physicians to understand and be more aware of early ALS, late ALS, and be much, unless they know about this stuff, it isn't on their radar, and their understanding about this disease is not there. So let's see if we can get those continuing medical education, and not only the physicians, but the nurses and others involved with these healthcare for this condition.
And I wanted to bring up another study. It's actually a NIH grant-funded study. It's a CREATE consortium. What it is, it's a non-therapeutic observational longitudinal study that looks at phenotype and genotype information. So genotype being some of the biological samples that would be provided, and also the phenotype looking at signs and symptoms. And it's based on like a 19th month period for patients to come in. ALS every 3 months, it would be 5 visits. They're looking at doing different assessments on the patient, respiratory, cognitive, to see any changes, get baseline data, and provide biological samples as well. And that opportunity would help to advance science forward with patients that would want to participate and help in that regard. Like I mentioned, it's non-therapeutic. There is an incentive for $40 for each study. The other thing that's would be an incentive is that you get a free genetic test results based on genetics for ALS or ALS-related diseases. It's not just ALS. It would be ALS, PLS, HSP, PMA, etc. So that would be another opportunity if you were, if there's any interest in participating in that study. We do have a flyer. Danielle could actually pass it out to anybody that's interested.
What comes to mind in that area is this whole ethical dilemma about genetic. You heard about CRISPR stuff? No. Okay, so CRISPR is an acronym for this genetic fixing of genetic disorders. And we're finding that ALS, a lot of these other things, are based upon wonky gene stuff in some cases. Or let me say that ALS is a syndrome that, and by syndrome, like, it's an arbitrary definition. So a variety of things interfere with your nerve function in a way that leads to what we call ALS. But there's a lot of things that occur at the genetic level that the talk right now is we can fix that. And this CRISPR technology involves a enzyme that specifically can cut out or insert genes to fix things. And everyone's just tripping over themselves to figure out how to apply this in making, well, there's one right now that's going over, it'll have mosquitoes not be able to transmit malaria. Or mosquitoes will die if they get this gene added to their system. And within weeks, all the mosquitoes in the neighborhood will be gone because mosquitoes, anyway, I digress. Those methodologies aren't being talked about for a variety of diseases. The ethical issues about changing the genetics of people is what we want to talk more about.
While you're up here, I wanted to ask you something. Does your organization collaborate with your counterparts in other countries? Because I can't imagine that the United States has all the expertise on ALS. And that expertise worldwide should be shared.
Yeah, with the CREATE study that I was talking about is a consortium. It consists of 17 institutions throughout the United States, where they're trying to build, like you were talking about, biobanking for specific tissues, CSF, blood, brain donation, to have a repository, to advance science, like you were talking about earlier. And I know that Dr. Ravitz, who is the primary PI at UCSD, Clinical ALS Clinical Research Program, that he does partner with other neurologists, not only intercontinental, but also around the world. So,
Thank you.
Well, the conference in Boston is international.
Good.
Last year was in Dublin.
Let's have it in San Diego.
Yeah. Any other questions from our attendees? Yep. Yep. No.
About the CRISPR.
Yes. Yes.
So it's changing people's genetics,
Yes.
and there is opposition to this, which is hampering the development of the research.
Yes.
So what's the forecast?
I think this technology and related gene editing needs to have broader recognition on the part of the public and more focus in that area. There are, but again, let's take another disease, sickle cell anemia, which for decades we've known it's one alteration that causes chronic pain, suffering, blindness, a terrible disease in the African American community. But bringing up the idea of various methods genetically to fix that makes people very nervous. ALS, well, so this business about genetic modification of humans makes people kind of nervous. And we need that discussion to make those ethical changes. Is it for humans, for us, to change what it means to be human, which 99% is monkey genetics, and what we're 90% banana genes or something? Anyway, yeah.
So one more thing that I can do when I'm frustrated,
Oh, that's all the time.
is register with the Center for Disease Control. So we have a registry, it's nationwide. So if you want to fight back against ALS, one of the ways you can help the researchers worldwide is to register with the Center for Disease Control. Don't think somebody did this for you on your medical team. You or your loved ones can help you do this online. If you want our help, we'll help you do it. There's plenty of people who help you, but it doesn't happen automatically. You need to register with the Center for Disease Control, okay? Just an encouragement. If you can do that, it does help the research. And nationwide, we have rough data on how many people typically have ALS in the country at a given time and how many people are registered. Frankly, there's a gap. There's a huge gap. So we're working hard this year and next to get everybody registered. It's a personal decision, but we'd encourage you to consider doing that. We have the information, okay?
And I guess for mine to get that word out, in the past I've had tables at the Del Mar, or I guess the San Diego County Fair, and maybe we should have an ALS booth at the county fair.
That'd be awesome.
All right, let's talk about it, Keith.
We'll be there.
One thing I wanted to add to that is that the FDA encourages people to enroll in research studies, in particular minority groups. And the reason for that is that different diseases and different conditions affect different groups differently. And we want to find out more about how to target treatments to certain groups, because there are genetic differences and other differences as well.
I do have a question, and that is, are we at a disadvantage because not many of us, so the money for research is not available because only a few of us, and the disease
So we are an orphan disease, as people call it. It is rare. Families' involvement in individuals is unfortunately typically limited. We continue to advocate. We continue to put a personal face on the needs of our individuals and families with ALS. We're not going to go away. We're going to be heard. We're going to continue to support the VA and their efforts. We encourage our members to get involved in advocacy. It's not something you choose to do. Let your congressmen, both local and national, know that you'd like to be sure funding for research at the NIH, is it, Gil? Yes. NIH continues, because there's been a lot of news about that being cut severely. And we just have to continue to be a voice, a strong voice, for finding more treatments and cures and moving the research forward. It's a difficult area. Research is expensive, but we're going to keep at it.
I'd like to mention something about the FDA's role in it. This being an orphan disease, the FDA has special programs for approving drugs for orphan diseases. One thing I know, and I'm not an expert on this, but I know that for companies that want to get approvals for drugs and go through the FDA approval process, a lot of times they may, because it is an orphan disease affecting relatively few people, they may not have the same financial incentives to pursue treatments or drugs. Well, the FDA, as I understand it, waives these very large fees that drug companies usually have to pay when it's an orphan drug that's involved. And I believe there's also more of a fast track status for those new drug applications.
Yes, a portion of the ice bucket money was spent working with the FDA on fast track procedures. And Radicava, recently approved in May by the FDA, was the first drug to go through that process. There were no clinical trials done in the United States. Okay, the data was taken, it was FDA approved based on, and that saved us, 2 years probably, and countless millions and millions of dollars waiting. So it's working, it's up, we appreciate the support, and through the ice bucket money, that was one of the benefits. So those events can really help. Yeah, Mitch is right, what's the next one? We need that, but we're going to keep at it and steadily advocate on your behalf for research. That's part of what our mission is.
I would yell, but it doesn't work. What is an orphan disease? What is an orphan disease? How do you get to be one?
So an orphan disease is a rare disease. I can't recall if it's the incidence supposed to be one in 100,000? Okay. So rare diseases, a lot of money goes into diabetes and heart disease, et cetera. And the American Heart, American Diabetes have lots of support and et cetera. But a variety of other diseases, disorders like ALS, don't have that high incidence or prevalence. And they have been designated orphan diseases. And with that, again, some of this other stuff can apply. So
I had heard that an orphan disease is one that, I may have this wrong, but is one that affects 20,000 or fewer people in the United States in any given year.
We're at about 24,000, depending on the data, and still viewed as a very small number against some of the others. So, yeah. So do we have any other questions or comments someone wants to make? We're going to wrap this up. Gil, please.
Since there was a few people that came in.
Sure, come on
A
up
little
and,
late.
and face the camera.
Hello.
For the
Gil
webcast.
Gutierrez, ALS Clinical Research Program. There's a few people that came in after we had made our initial announcement about a clinical trial, a new clinical trial that's available. It is a double randomized therapeutic study. It's looking at the safety and efficacy of a drug called HP Athgar. It's an FDA-approved drug for other indications. They are looking at the safety and effectiveness for ALS. It is the study's approximately 49 weeks. 36 weeks, the individual would actually take it's double random. It's a double-blinded study, meaning that 2 to 1 that the individual would actually get the medication versus the placebo. There are some exclusion factors with that. One of the biggest ones is currently right now, the individual has to be on Rizal for a steady amount of time, about 4 weeks for Rizal, and also the respiratory FEC should be 60%, above 60%. So those are the two big exclusionary factors. There's some other exclusionary factors where if you're interested, if you could meet that criteria, we would definitely be able to talk to you further. There would be a screening period or a call that we'd actually go over. There's some other things that we would check with your blood. There'd be hepatitis, HIV, things like some other exclusionary factors that we would talk about. But we just wanted to come and let other individuals know about that. We do have some brochures that you can take, contact information.
There is one more big exclusion criteria. It's symptom onset. Symptom onset has to be within 2 years. I know that's a big factor for a lot of patients. Also, diabetes and any positive tests for Hep B, C, HIV. Those are all exclusion. But yeah.
Exclusions are listed on the website?
Yeah, they would actually be on clinicaltrials.gov. It would have exactly. It'd have the inclusion, exclusion, the name of the PI. In this case, it would be Dr. Ravitz in San Diego County, and all of the other pertinent information regarding the protocol or the synopsis of the study. So it would list that, and I can definitely give out information if there's any interested parties regarding a brief overview and contact information if that's appropriate.
Thank you, Gil. And your coworker? Danielle, thank you. Dimples, we call her at the clinic. I just shared that with the whole world, Danielle. So, Mitz, I'm going to thank you for putting this together for us today, and your speaker from the FDA, George, thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Appreciate it. And that concludes our webcast for November. So James will shut off the camera and microphone in just a second. You're welcome to stay. Please enjoy. Papa John's, thank you for providing some pizza for us. And